If you want to call it a practice, it's the practice of acknowledgement rather than the practice of seeking. Instead of how do I get to that state of peace, it's just acknowledge its presence now. But it's got to be genuine. You've got to take that moment, just that moment, to go, oh, yeah. Conscious awareness is here now, and it seems to be experienced like this right now. Oh, yeah. That's a moment of acknowledgement. The acknowledgement undercuts the search, undercuts the looking, the frantic grasping. So you can do that. And it also comes in, it's very important too to be able to look when you really do feel caught and taken over by your mind or your feelings, to look, to make it a study, not an intellectual study, but the study of observation, the study of being totally present to what's happening, so that you see all the intricate ways that the mind, ego, keep recreating a kind of division or recreating a way of obscuring what's already present. And not getting involved in judgment and condemnation and all that kind of stuff. Not asking why is it happening, and all these questions just lead you further away, further into abstraction. But just stay with seeing it. How does your particular makeup obscure what's always been present? In any given moment, how is it doing it? Watch it. What is the thought? What's going on? Are you going into fantasy? Are you going into judgment? Are you going into one part of yourself in competition with the other part of yourself? Are you trying to hold on to something? Are you in denial? All these are just internal gestures of self. When you can really see all the gestures for what they really are, you naturally stop falling for them. As long as you don't see them really clearly, when they start to operate, they'll hook you, like a fish getting hooked, on a lure. They hook you because you haven't seen it clearly enough. Once you see it with deep clarity, when they happen, you'll just see it, and something will just be, you'll just know, like, no, I'm not doing that. I know what it is, and I know where it's going to lead me. I don't have to go on the ride again to find out. Does it take some discipline for a while to say, no, I'm not going to go that direction? When my mind does that, I know where it leads me. And so, no, I'm not going that way. I'm not going down that thought stream. I'm not going to that fantasy. I'm not going to that imagination. That's not what I'm going to do. Without going into competition, without struggling. It's just a simple thing like, no. That is to deny what actually is present. I would rather put attention on what's actually present now rather than what my mind's trying to create. And it can feel like a discipline. And it is its own kind of discipline. And most people need to exercise this discipline. It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it. If you don't use it, it doesn't get strong. It's one of the most important things to realize in spiritual work. There's almost these spiritual muscles or capacities of consciousness and attention that I think in so many of us human beings, they're so atrophied out of misuse or disuse that that you have to utilize them again. You have to, when you start to utilize them, they're like a muscle that starts to come alive and gain strength again. And you do have this kind of capacity. It does take a certain kind of discipline. It's like sometimes if you're meditating, the only thing you can do, say, for instance, is just follow your breath. Just follow your breath. Well, how do I not get lost in my thoughts? Follow your breath. Yeah, but I get lost, 3 times in a given minute or 20 times in a given minute. It doesn't matter. Every time you notice you've been lost, follow your breath. Well, how's that going to help me? Don't ask the question. You're lost in your mind again. Follow your breath. You see, in all the ways the mind just keeps spinning, it just keeps turning and shifting shape in order to hook you, to get a lure that you'll bite on. So certainly initially, it can take some real discipline to notice what your lures are, what things you keep biting on, what things that you've grasped at your whole life. And to begin to decide that you're going to exercise a different option. You're literally going to start to exercise a different muscle of consciousness or attention. And this isn't just abstract. I mean, this isn't fanciful. You can hook people up to brainwave machines, get them to make different decisions consistently in their lives, practice doing this every single day. They just practice, they might take their 30 minutes or hour or whatever, and then during the day, as much as they can, they're practicing it. And you hook them back up a month later, and you can see the way their brain is firing is different. They've changed it. They're starting to lay new neural pathways. They're getting out of the old survival part of the brain, the old reptilian survival instinct, and they're getting into the higher structures of the brain, which can actually, they're not reactive. They're not conditioned simply around survival. So I could talk about this from many different contexts, from a purely spiritual context to a scientific context. There's lots of contexts. What I'm talking about is it's not a matter of belief. It's just knowledge. That you do have a part to play. You do have a very important part to play. But you have to decide to do it, and you have to decide to make it a discipline. And you have to decide to start making different choices. And when you do, you'll feel something in you will resist that because you've made the same choices for decades. So of course you're going to feel that conditioning bumping up against something different you're trying to do. You don't go into competition with it. You're not trying to win it. You're not trying to defeat your conditioning. You're not even trying to get rid of it. You're just in the moment making a different choice than the one that's just habitual. The one that's habitual will seem the most natural in a sense and the easiest because it's the one you're programmed with. But you just start making these little moments of decision, hundreds of times a day. And if you really do it, I tell people all the time, this isn't complex. It's actually doing something very simple with great consistency. Not trying to be perfect. It's being okay with losing your train of thought 1,000 times. It doesn't matter. It's just the consistency. What decision am I making right now? What am I paying attention to right now? What do I want to be devoted to right now? And by the way, what have I been being devoted to? And it's one of the real eye-opening things about becoming conscious is when you start to see that you've been literally devoted to a whole lot of ways of inwardly being that cause you a whole lot of pain. Because they're conditioned in such a way that you're literally devoted to the very kind of inner gestures, inner movements, inner choices that cause so much suffering. And when you see that, at first it's humbling, like, gosh, I was somehow along the line, I just got taught to make all these inward choices of how I relate to my own mind and my own feelings. And I've been taught to make these choices that have become so habitual that I make them almost without even knowing I'm doing them. That's what a habitual choice is. It's almost, you can't even hardly call it a choice at that point. That are causing me pain. So again, the need to make a study of yourself. And you can't make a study of something you're running away from or trying to solve it at every moment or trying to get beyond it. And you can't make a real study. You can't really look. If you're judging what you find, you're judging it. I shouldn't be doing, I shouldn't be, you feel ashamed, you feel all these conflict. You can't make a study of it as long as you're lost in all that. And if you are lost in all those kind of judging emotions, then make a study of that. See that those are also a whole bunch of moment-to-moment little conditioned decisions that are being made hundreds of times a day. And they don't need to be made. When you make a decision to start to turn it around and you actually practice it, you actually do it, you make it a kind of discipline without fighting yourself, it's just a discipline of a different choice. Even if you make the choice and then the next second, it seems like you make the opposite choice. Okay, I've just done that. Okay, now I want to come back to not just doing the old condition, so you're not fighting it, but even if you get lost, 100 times in a half an hour, it doesn't matter. What matters is exercising that part of yourself that realizes that you literally are restructuring your consciousness. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get emails from people that are like, where does choice come from? Is there a chooser? Do we have free will? Do we not have free will? All of that kind of stuff. And, if you really feel like you have to send me an email about that, go right ahead. I probably won't respond to it, to be quite honest. Because it's, it's one of those questions that it's not, philosophically it's intriguing and you'll find certain spiritual teachers that will really emphasize choice. Others will say you have no choice whatsoever. I find the whole argument to be completely beside the point. I don't think it matters what side you really come down on. I think it's, at the end of the day, there are two sides of a duality. What side do you want to come down on? When people ask me, do we have choice or not? I just say yes. Yes, we do, and yes, we don't. That's my experience. And we do and we don't at the same instant. And I can't make it more logical than that, because all of the ways we speak is always in duality. It's either this or that. Reality is never this or that. Reality is that which creates both this and that. Reality that expresses itself as this or that side of a duality. Reality is that bigger, all-encompassing structure of existence that you can't limit to these conclusions. We can all, I think, at a certain depth, we can go in and have an experience of no choice whatsoever, that everything just happens totally automatically. We can also go in, if we're not too attached to that, and we can see that actually there's these little moments of choice, or what seem to be moments of choice. So it's really best not to get lost in sort of philosophical debates that just keep you chasing your tail or adhering to one side of the debate or the other side of the debate. Exclusive sides to these kind of debates, if it's exclusive, it's just not whole, it's not complete, it's not ultimately real. What we have is experience. And experience always transcends the intellectual conclusions that are talking about experience.